In a world where constant communication often equates to success, we are taught to speak up, voice our opinions, and be heard. However, what if true influence isn't found in how much we speak, but in how carefully we choose our words? What if the ability to say less could actually be the key to making a greater impact in both our personal and professional lives? This book challenges the common belief that more words lead to more influence, offering a transformative perspective on communication. It's not about speaking less for the sake of silence, but about speaking with purpose, precision, and intentionality. The goal is to help you refine your ability to communicate effectively, ensuring that each word you say carries weight and contributes meaningfully to the conversation. As you move through the chapters ahead, you'll uncover practical strategies for mastering the art of speaking with impact. You'll learn how to control the urge to fill silence, how to choose your words strategically, and how to make a stronger impression in meetings, conversations, and emails. The insights shared here will empower you to express yourself more confidently, allowing you to communicate with clarity and influence, without the need for excessive explanation or unnecessary elaboration. By the end of this journey, you'll understand that the true power of communication lies not in quantity, but in quality. When you master the art of speaking less, you'll find that the respect, attention, and influence you desire are not only attainable, they're within your grasp. This is a new approach to communication, one that focuses on what really matters and teaches you how to make every word count. Chapter 1. Why talking too much is weakness, not strength. Talking too much can often feel like the right thing to do. It gives the illusion of control, intelligence, and confidence. But the truth is, excessive talking usually has the opposite effect. It can make you appear insecure, dilute the power of your words, and cause people to tune you out. Many of the most respected and influential individuals are those who speak with purpose, knowing that the fewer words they use, the more impact they have. Imagine being in a room where one person dominates the conversation, constantly sharing their thoughts without giving others a chance to speak. Over time, their words lose value, and people start disengaging. On the other hand, when someone speaks rarely but with precision, people listen intently. Their words hold weight because they are not thrown around carelessly. The most effective communicators understand that power lies not in the quantity of words, but in their quality and delivery. Silence can be uncomfortable, but it is also one of the most powerful tools in communication. When used intentionally, it allows space for thought and encourages others to contribute. Many people fear silence and try to fill it with unnecessary words, thinking it will keep the conversation going. In reality, pausing before speaking makes you appear more confident and gives your words greater meaning. It shows that you are thoughtful, measured, and deliberate in your approach. There is an old saying that knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. People who are truly knowledgeable do not feel the need to prove themselves by constantly talking. Instead, they listen, absorb information, and only speak when they have something valuable to add. This makes their words more impactful and increases their credibility. Those who talk excessively often reveal too much, sometimes to their own disadvantage. They give away their thoughts, emotions, and strategies without realizing how much information they are exposing. Resisting the urge to talk too much requires self-discipline and awareness. One of the most effective ways to do this is by practicing active listening. When engaged in a conversation, focus on understanding what the other person is saying rather than thinking about what you will say next. This not only makes you a better communicator, but also earns you respect from others. People appreciate those who genuinely listen and respond thoughtfully, rather than those who simply wait for their turn to speak. Another important aspect of speaking with impact is knowing when to stop. If you find yourself over-explaining or repeating points, take a step back. Effective communication is not about proving how much you know, but about delivering your message clearly and concisely. When you keep your words precise and to the point, you leave a lasting impression rather than overwhelming people with excessive details. Many successful leaders and influential figures are known for their ability to speak less and say more. They understand that by choosing their words carefully, they maintain control over their message and their presence. When you speak too much, you give away your power. When you speak with intention, you command attention and respect. The key to mastering this skill is to develop a strong sense of self-awareness and to recognize the moments when silence can be more powerful than speech. Confidence is often mistaken for talking a lot, but in reality, true confidence is knowing that your words carry weight. You do not need to dominate a conversation to make an impact. Instead, you need to ensure that when you do speak, people listen. This comes from a place of self-assurance, knowing that your voice matters and that silence can be just as influential as words. By embracing the power of saying less, you not only enhance your communication skills, but also cultivate a presence that others respect and admire. The challenge lies in breaking old habits and retraining yourself to be comfortable with strategic silence. It is a skill that takes time to develop, but offers immense benefits in personal and professional interactions. The more you practice speaking with purpose, the more natural it becomes. Soon you will notice how people start paying more attention when you speak, how your words become more memorable, and how your influence grows. The ability to say less and mean more is one of the most powerful tools you can develop, and it is within your reach. Chapter 2. Speak less, earn more respect. In every interaction, there's an invisible exchange taking place. It's not just about the words you speak, it's about how those words shape the way others see you. Too often, people think that the more they talk, the more respect they will earn. They believe that if they can speak confidently, offer more ideas, and always have something to say, others will see them as powerful or important. But in reality, it's the opposite. Talking too much can actually diminish the respect others have for you, while speaking less can increase it. In every conversation, your presence and the way you communicate speak volumes, even more than the words you choose. People are naturally drawn to those who have the discipline to hold back and speak only when it truly matters. This doesn't mean remaining silent all the time. It means recognizing the value of every word and understanding that true strength lies not in the ability to talk, but in the ability to listen, observe, and speak with purpose. It's easy to be the one who fills the silence, who is always ready with an answer or an opinion. But in doing so, we may miss an opportunity to be perceived as thoughtful, calm, and deliberate. The more you speak, the more you expose yourself, sometimes in ways that don't reflect your true intentions or capabilities. On the other hand, when you speak less and choose your words carefully, you show that you are in control, that you have mastered the art of communication, and in turn, that you are someone who deserves respect. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are, they aren't the ones who dominate every conversation with their own voice. They are the ones who listen intently, who wait for the right moment to speak, and when they do speak, their words carry weight. There's a depth to their presence. They don't need to say much, because their words are always chosen with intention. This is the mark of someone who commands respect. Respect isn't earned by how loud you speak, or how frequently you contribute. It's earned by how much you value the space around you, by how much you make others feel seen and heard, and by how you make your words count. When you give others the chance to express themselves, you're showing that you value their opinions. When you speak less, you create room for those around you to rise. People appreciate being listened to, and in turn, they respect those who know how to listen. Imagine walking into a room full of people where one person is constantly talking, jumping from topic to topic, unable to stop themselves from filling every moment with their own voice. Now picture someone else in that room, someone who speaks only when they have something important to add, who carefully considers their words before speaking, and who doesn't feel the need to fill every silence. Which person do you gravitate toward? Which one do you trust more? The answer is clear. The person who speaks less is the one who stands out, who commands attention, and who earns respect. This isn't just a theory, it's something that can be seen in action every day. People who speak less and listen more are often the ones who lead with influence, who make decisions that carry weight, and whose opinions others value. Their words are seen as more precious because they aren't wasted. They don't speak just for the sake of speaking. When they do speak, it's with clarity and purpose, and this gives their words a kind of gravitas that others can't ignore. The person who talks too much, on the other hand, risks diluting their own message. When words are abundant, they lose their impact. Think about the last time someone spoke for an extended period without saying anything of real substance. You likely tuned out, didn't you? The more they talked, the less you listened. This happens because people inherently understand that words have value. When someone speaks too often, their words begin to lose that value. People start to assume that they're just filling the space, not contributing anything meaningful. This doesn't mean that silence is always the best option. There's a time to speak and a time to listen, and knowing the difference is key. The most respected individuals are the ones who know when to speak up and when to remain quiet. They don't feel the need to share their thoughts just because they have them. They understand that their silence often speaks louder than their words ever could. If you want to earn respect, start by speaking less. It's not about withholding your thoughts. It's about choosing the right moments to express them. When you speak, make it count. Think about the message you want to convey and ensure that it adds value to the conversation. This doesn't mean being overly calculated or guarded. It simply means having the awareness to recognize when your words will have the most impact. When you speak with this kind of intention, people will take you more seriously, and your words will resonate far more deeply than if you were to simply add to the noise. Take note of the people around you who are most respected. Observe how they communicate. They don't feel the need to dominate conversations, and they certainly don't engage in endless small talk. Instead, they know how to make their point with precision and confidence. They choose their words carefully, and as a result, people listen when they speak. Their words have power because they aren't thrown around carelessly. They have purpose. To build this kind of presence, practice pausing before you speak. Let the silence sit for a moment before you fill it with words. In doing so, you create space for your thoughts to settle and for the conversation to develop. This pause also signals to others that you are someone who thinks before speaking, someone who doesn't rush to fill the air with empty words. It's a simple habit that has a profound effect on the way people perceive you. When you pause, people start to listen more intently, waiting for the carefully considered words you're about to say. The next time you're in a conversation, challenge yourself to speak less. See how others respond when you don't immediately jump in with your opinion or try to steer the conversation in your direction. Observe how they engage with you. Chances are they'll start to value your input more because you've given them the space to speak and be heard. You're no longer just adding noise to the conversation, you're contributing something meaningful. By speaking less and listening more, you start to transform the way you communicate. You stop trying to prove your worth with every word, and instead start letting your presence, your silence, and your thoughtful contributions earn the respect of those around you. People won't remember the many things you said, but they'll remember the few moments when your words truly mattered. And in the end, that's what makes all the difference. Chapter 3. The magic of pausing before you speak. There's something profoundly powerful in a moment of silence. We often rush to fill every gap in conversation with words, thinking that silence feels awkward or uncomfortable. But silence, when used correctly, is not only comfortable, it's effective. In fact, pausing before speaking can completely transform the way you communicate, the way others perceive you, and the impact of your message. Every conversation has a rhythm, and when you learn how to pause, you allow that rhythm to settle. A pause is not a sign of hesitation or weakness, it's a deliberate act of control, a conscious decision to wait and gather your thoughts before responding. It's in those quiet moments that clarity emerges, allowing you to speak with purpose, rather than rushing to fill the air with unnecessary noise. Think about any time you've been in a conversation with someone who pauses before responding. It doesn't matter if they're answering a question or making a statement. That pause creates an air of anticipation. You start to wonder what they're going to say next, because they've given you the impression that their words are valuable. They aren't just speaking to speak, they are speaking to make an impact. When you learn the magic of pausing before you speak, you stop being a reactive participant in conversations. Instead, you become an active creator. You don't just respond to what's being said. You take a moment to consider how your words will fit into the conversation. This pause allows you to approach communication from a place of control, clarity, and intentionality. You're no longer reacting to the conversation, you're shaping it with every word you speak. The world around us is filled with noise. Conversations happen in an instant, and people are always talking, always sharing opinions, and always looking for ways to make their voices heard. In such an environment, it's easy to fall into the habit of speaking too quickly, of rushing to say something before someone else does. But this rush doesn't benefit anyone. It only causes confusion, miscommunication, and the loss of the power that silence brings. When you pause, you create the space necessary to process the conversation fully. You aren't simply reacting to the words being thrown at you, you're taking in all the information, considering the emotional tone, and thinking about the best possible response. This kind of thoughtful communication shows others that you're in control of your thoughts and your emotions. People respect those who can think before they speak, because it shows maturity and self-awareness. It shows that they are not easily swept away by the speed of conversation, but that they carefully consider their contribution before making it. Pausing before you speak can also lead to more meaningful conversations. By taking a step back and waiting, you allow the conversation to unfold in its own time. Sometimes, the pause is all it takes for someone else to continue, offering insights they might have otherwise held back. This simple act of waiting can deepen a conversation, allowing ideas to emerge that might have been missed in the rush to respond. This principle applies in everyday situations, whether you're speaking with a friend, discussing something important with a colleague, or engaging in a heated debate. In each case, taking a moment to pause can change the dynamic of the exchange. You'll find that your words have more weight, and that people are more likely to listen to you when they sense that you're not just filling the air with idle chatter. They will begin to respect the quiet moments in your conversations, knowing that it's in those moments that you gather your thoughts and craft a response that truly matters. The pause also has an emotional effect. When you take a beat before speaking, it sends a message that you are not easily swayed by emotions or the pressure to respond. Whether it's a stressful situation or a casual chat, this pause allows you to choose your response thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. It's the difference between speaking out of frustration and speaking from a place of calm, measured confidence. In tense moments, the pause is a game changer. Have you ever been in a disagreement where emotions were running high? It's easy to get swept up in the heat of the moment and say things you don't mean. But if you take a second to pause and breathe before responding, you regain control of the situation. You might not have all the answers, but that moment of silence allows you to gather your thoughts, understand your feelings, and articulate your point of view without the heat of the moment clouding your judgment. This doesn't just help you stay calm, it helps you communicate more effectively and with greater emotional intelligence. Sometimes we think that speaking immediately will help us appear more knowledgeable, more confident, or more engaged in the conversation. But the truth is that speaking too quickly often comes across as rushed or unfocused. It can be tempting to jump into a conversation, especially when you feel like you have something important to say. But the best communicators know that the most powerful statements often come after a brief moment of reflection. Pausing is a sign of confidence. It shows that you don't need to rush. You aren't anxious to share your thoughts just to fill the silence. You trust that your words will come when they are ready, and that when you speak, they will be heard. The longer you practice pausing before you speak, the more comfortable you will become with the silence. You'll learn that silence isn't awkward. It's powerful. It gives you the time you need to choose your words carefully and speak from a place of clarity. The power of the pause also extends to how you communicate non-verbally. A pause isn't just about waiting to speak. It's also about the space you give others. In every conversation, people are often waiting for their turn to speak. When you take the time to pause, You offer them the opportunity to share their thoughts, which in turn makes them feel valued. This simple act of waiting allows the conversation to flow more naturally, creating a back and forth that feels less forced and more organic. People who speak too quickly often find themselves interrupting others or dominating the conversation. This can make them come across as overbearing or dismissive of others' opinions. But by embracing the pause, you create a space for others to contribute and make the conversation feel more balanced. It allows for more meaningful exchanges where everyone's voice is heard and the conversation becomes a true dialogue rather than a monologue. In addition to creating more meaningful exchanges, pausing before you speak also gives you the opportunity to listen. When you take that moment to stop and think, you're better able to absorb what the other person is saying. This is a critical skill in any conversation, as it allows you to respond thoughtfully, based on a full understanding of the situation. By practicing the pause, you develop better listening skills, and in turn, your communication becomes more empathetic and more effective. The next time you find yourself in a conversation, try embracing the pause. Notice how it changes the way you interact with others. You might feel a little uncomfortable at first, but as you practice, you'll begin to see how powerful this simple tool can be. It will help you speak with more intention, listen more attentively, and build stronger connections with those around you. You'll learn that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Just wait, reflect, and then speak when you are ready. Chapter 4. How to stop talking just to fill the silence. There's something almost instinctive about the urge to fill every silence in a conversation. We've all been there. A pause starts to form, and before it becomes noticeable, we jump in to speak. We fear that silence makes us seem awkward, unprepared, or disconnected. The problem is that filling every gap with words doesn't enhance communication. It often weakens it. The desire to keep talking, to make sure the silence is eradicated, may actually be one of the biggest communication pitfalls. Stopping this automatic response to fill the silence can be incredibly transformative, not just for your conversations, but for the way you present yourself. Silence, in many ways, is a sign of strength. It shows that you are comfortable in your own thoughts, and that you don't feel the need to constantly prove yourself. It indicates a level of confidence, patience, and self-control that others will recognize and respect. Think about a time when you were in a conversation and you were speaking to someone who seemed to be constantly adding unnecessary commentary, filling every moment with words. It may have felt a bit overwhelming, even exhausting. The reason for this is simple. When someone is talking just to fill the silence, they aren't engaging with you, they're just filling space. Their words don't have any real weight or purpose, and eventually, you might stop listening altogether. Now contrast that with someone who is comfortable with silence. They're not afraid of letting the conversation breathe, letting the moment settle. When they do speak, it feels more meaningful, because it's clear that their words aren't just tossed out into the conversation, they are carefully chosen. There's a quiet confidence in their ability to let a moment pass without speaking, and that confidence makes their words land with much more impact. You might think that if you aren't constantly talking, you'll be seen as disengaged or uninterested. In fact, the opposite is true. When you resist the urge to speak just to fill the space, it shows that you are present and mindful of the flow of the conversation. It shows that you're fully absorbing what the other person is saying, and when it's your turn to speak, you have something meaningful to offer. This is the mark of a thoughtful communicator, someone who understands that words are powerful and that they should not be thrown around recklessly. The next time you're in a conversation, try to notice when you feel the urge to speak, simply to avoid the discomfort of silence. It might happen in small moments when someone finishes speaking, when there's a lull, or when you're thinking about what to say next. Most people, when faced with these moments, feel compelled to say something just to keep things moving. But resisting that impulse is where the magic happens. It's in those moments of silence that you have the chance to collect your thoughts and think about what you really want to contribute. Filling the silence with unnecessary words is often a way of seeking validation or approval. We talk because we want to be seen, heard, and understood. But over time, this need to constantly talk can work against us. When we fill every gap with our voice, we unintentionally push others away from truly listening. Instead of creating space for connection, we might end up creating distance. Think about how different it feels when someone gives you the floor to speak. They pause and listen, genuinely interested in what you have to say. Their silence becomes an invitation for you to share. It's a powerful experience because it makes you feel valued. That's what the silence can do for you when you choose to embrace it. It invites people into the conversation. It makes others feel that their words are just as important as yours, and this sense of mutual respect is key to building stronger, more meaningful relationships. When you stop talking just to fill the silence, you also open yourself up to the possibility of truly hearing what others have to say. Many times, the best ideas and insights come not from what you say, but from what you allow others to express. The longer you wait before speaking, the more likely you are to hear something valuable that might have gone unnoticed if you'd been talking over the other person. This kind of active listening allows you to connect with people in a deeper way, making your conversations not just about exchanging words, but about truly understanding one another. It's important to remember that silence is not the same as disengagement. There's a big difference between being quiet because you're lost in your thoughts and being quiet because you're simply not interested. When you embrace silence in conversations, it signals to others that you are fully present. You're not trying to rush the exchange or force your thoughts into the conversation. Instead, you're listening, reflecting, and offering a response that is thoughtful and relevant. Sometimes, the silence is what gives the conversation its power. It's the space between your words that makes what you say next more meaningful. When you speak after allowing the silence to stretch for a moment, your words carry more weight. People will be listening more intently, not only because you've created the space for them to focus, but also because they recognize that you aren't speaking just for the sake of speaking. There's a wisdom that comes with silence. When you're comfortable with silence, you show that you are in control of your thoughts and your reactions. You don't feel the need to rush, to cover every moment with words, or to express every passing thought. You become more deliberate, more measured in how you communicate. This kind of self-control is something that others will notice, respect, and begin to admire. The next time you're in a situation where you might normally feel the urge to fill the silence, try to pause instead. Allow yourself a moment to think, to breathe, and to really listen. Resist the temptation to speak just for the sake of it. In doing so, you'll not only become a more effective communicator, but you'll also begin to notice how much more you can learn from others. You'll also find that the quality of your contributions to the conversation will improve because they will come from a place of thoughtfulness, reflection, and genuine connection. Silence isn't a void, it's a space of potential. It's a tool that, when used correctly, enhances communication and deepens relationships. When you allow silence to be a part of your interactions, you create a new kind of communication, one that is thoughtful, respectful, and rooted in understanding. People will begin to value your words more because they know that when you speak, it's not just noise, it's something worth listening to. Chapter 5. Think before you speak. You've probably had moments when you spoke without really thinking first, moments where your words just spilled out. Maybe it was in a heated conversation, a nervous moment, or just one of those times when you felt compelled to say something, even though you weren't sure if it was necessary. In those instances, your words might have lost their impact, or worse, caused a misunderstanding. The truth is, speaking without thinking can lead to consequences you didn't intend, whether it's damaging a relationship, creating confusion, or simply missing the mark. When you stop and take a moment to think before you speak, you do more than just avoid saying something inappropriate or poorly timed. You open up the possibility for deeper, more intentional conversations. The idea of thinking before speaking isn't just about filtering yourself. It's about ensuring that what you say aligns with your true thoughts and intentions, that your words are deliberate and meaningful. Most people are reactive by nature. They respond to things quickly, without processing all the nuances of what's being said, and they often miss the bigger picture. This reactionary mode is often driven by emotions or the pressure to be heard. But if you've ever been in a situation where you've said something and immediately wished you could take it back, you've seen the downside of that fast-paced reaction. When we respond impulsively, we often don't allow ourselves the time to choose our words carefully, and we may end up saying something that we don't mean, or worse, saying something that causes harm. Thinking before speaking doesn't just help you avoid mistakes. It actually improves the quality of your communication. When you take a moment to pause, you open yourself up to more thoughtful responses. You give yourself a chance to consider the situation fully, to absorb what the other person is saying, and then choose a response that is purposeful and meaningful. This kind of thoughtful communication has a much greater impact because it is grounded in self-awareness and clarity. By taking the time to think before speaking, you also gain control over the conversation. Conversations can easily spiral into misunderstandings or arguments when people speak impulsively or emotionally. However, when you remain calm, take a breath, and process the situation before responding, you avoid getting caught up in the heat of the moment. You create space for a more measured response, one that shows you are fully present and in control of your emotions. This is powerful because it demonstrates emotional intelligence and maturity. When you think before speaking, you're also protecting yourself from saying something you might regret later. How many times have you heard someone say, "I didn't mean to say that," or "I didn't think it through"? These are common phrases because people often speak without first considering the consequences of their words. When we're impulsive, we don't stop to ask ourselves whether what we're saying is helpful, necessary, or even accurate. But if we train ourselves to take a moment before speaking, we can avoid these knee-jerk reactions and instead engage in conversations that are more productive, respectful, and true to our intentions. A simple pause before speaking also gives you the opportunity to consider the feelings of others. Every word we speak has the potential to affect someone, whether we realize it or not. If you take the time to think about what you're about to say, you're more likely to speak in a way that is considerate and empathetic. Instead of just spitting out whatever comes to mind, you can ask yourself, will this be helpful? How will this make the other person feel? Am I being honest, or am I saying this just to be heard? These questions allow you to communicate with a level of mindfulness that strengthens your relationships and builds trust. This habit of thinking before speaking also helps you avoid misunderstandings. When you rush to respond, you may miss critical details in the conversation, leading to responses that don't address the real issue. By taking time to process what's being said, you ensure that your words are relevant and on point. The more you practice this, the more naturally it will come to you. You'll find yourself giving more thoughtful responses that show you are actively listening and engaged in the conversation. Being a good communicator isn't just about having the right words to say. It's also about knowing when to speak and when to listen. Taking a moment to think before you respond is as much about being a good listener as it is about choosing the right words. It allows you to absorb the full context of the conversation, to understand the emotions behind the words, and to make sure your response is aligned with what's truly important. This way, your words come from a place of understanding, not assumption or quick judgment. In a world where speed is often valued over thoughtfulness, taking time to reflect before speaking might seem like a luxury. But the truth is, this pause isn't a waste of time. It's an investment in your communication. It's an investment in deeper connections, in creating conversations that are not just about exchanging words, but about understanding one another at a deeper level. The more you practice thinking before speaking, the more you'll notice that your words carry more weight, your conversations are more fulfilling, and your relationships are strengthened. Thinking before speaking also means recognizing that silence is an important part of the conversation. It's not about filling every second with words. It's about creating space for your thoughts to settle, for the other person to speak, and for a more balanced dialogue to emerge. Many of the most effective communicators are those who speak less but say more. They understand the power of silence, the importance of timing, and the value of thoughtful, well-crafted responses. In practice, thinking before speaking doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process. It's not about overthinking everything you say, but about giving yourself a moment to assess the situation and decide how best to engage. If you're in a conversation and something unexpected comes up, rather than immediately reacting, take a brief pause. Use that moment to assess the context, understand the emotions involved, and decide how your response can add value. This slight delay in speaking can be the difference between a productive exchange and a conflict. The more you practice this habit of thinking before speaking, the more natural it will feel. Over time, it will become second nature to pause and reflect before offering your thoughts. You'll begin to notice that your words have more impact because they come from a place of clarity and intention. You'll find yourself engaging in deeper, more meaningful conversations that leave both you and the other person feeling understood and respected. Mastering the art of thinking before speaking isn't just a way to improve your communication skills. It's a way to improve your relationships, your self-awareness, and your ability to navigate the complexities of life. It's a skill that will serve you in every situation, whether it's a casual chat with a friend, a work-related discussion, or a challenging conversation with a loved one. When you learn to pause, think, and then speak, you become a more effective communicator, a more thoughtful person, and a better listener. And in turn, you create conversations that matter. Conversations that build understanding, create connection, and foster trust. And all of that starts with a simple pause before you speak. Chapter 6. Cut the fluff, get to the point faster. There's something truly freeing about getting to the point quickly in a conversation, especially when it's done in a way that feels natural and deliberate. Too often, we fall into the trap of adding unnecessary details, throwing in extra words that don't really add value. It's like clutter, words that don't need to be there, but we feel compelled to use them anyway. The truth is, the more we can cut through the noise and get straight to the point, the more we can engage people, respect their time, and make a lasting impression. The ability to get to the point quickly isn't just about being concise, it's about being effective. It's about communicating in a way that respects your listener, that shows you value their time and attention. Think about the conversations that stick with you, the ones where someone has an idea or a point to make, and they don't hesitate. They deliver it clearly and confidently, without the excess. These conversations are memorable because they feel sharp, direct, and purposeful. On the other hand, consider how it feels when someone starts speaking and continues on and on, circling around the main point. It can be frustrating, right? You start losing interest, your attention drifts, and eventually it becomes a chore to stay engaged. It's easy to get lost in the weeds, and before you know it, you've tuned out, missing the main message entirely. This is what happens when you add too much fluff to your conversations. It's not only ineffective, but it also risks losing the listener's attention and the impact of your message. Getting to the point doesn't mean rushing through everything or leaving out important details. It means stripping away the unnecessary, focusing on what truly matters, and delivering it in a clear and confident way. It's about understanding that the essence of what you have to say doesn't require all the extra filler. Your message, your idea, or your point is powerful enough on its own, and when you remove the distractions, it stands out more. The key to being clear and concise in your conversations is understanding the purpose behind your words. Before you speak, ask yourself, what am I trying to convey? What do I want the other person to understand or do as a result of what I'm saying? If you can't answer that question right away, take a moment to think it through. When you know what you want to communicate, it becomes much easier to eliminate anything that isn't directly related to that core message. Think about a time when you've been in a meeting, a class, or even just a casual conversation, and someone goes on for what feels like forever without ever getting to the heart of the matter. It can be draining. The person may have valuable insights, but by the time they reach their point, most of the audience has checked out. What would have made a difference? If they'd stripped away the excess, the repetitive sentences, and the irrelevant side stories, they could have delivered their message clearly and quickly. It's a sign of respect for the audience to get to the point without dragging things out unnecessarily. This principle applies not only to spoken conversations, but to written communication as well. In emails, texts, and even social media posts, it's easy to fall into the trap of rambling. We might over-explain, try to cover every angle, or simply provide more information than is needed. Yet, just like in spoken conversations, brevity is often more impactful. When you're concise, you're not only making it easier for the other person to understand you, but you're also showing them that you respect their time. The goal isn't to say everything you could possibly say, it's to say what needs to be said in the most effective way possible. Think about how much more productive your interactions would be if you removed the excess. Whether you're talking to a colleague, a friend, or a family member, when you focus on the key points, it creates space for clarity and understanding. It also makes you seem more confident. People trust those who can express themselves succinctly, who can cut through the fluff and communicate directly. It shows that you value your own time and theirs. Being clear and concise also helps prevent misunderstandings. When you over-explain or give too many details, you run the risk of confusing the listener. They might become overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information and miss the important bits. The more straightforward you are, the less room there is for misinterpretation. The point you're trying to make becomes sharper, easier to understand, and ultimately more impactful. Of course, there are times when context and explanation are necessary. Some conversations require depth, details, and nuance. But even then, it's possible to get to the point first and then provide any necessary details afterward. For example, if you're explaining something complicated, start by giving a brief overview of the main idea. Then, if needed, dive into the specifics. This way, you've already established the core message, and your listener knows where you're headed. Another effective way to get to the point is to use examples or analogies that clarify your message without overloading it with extraneous information. Instead of over-explaining, you can provide a simple illustration that brings your point to life. A well-chosen example can speak volumes more than a long-winded explanation ever could. It makes your message memorable, relatable, and easier to understand. It's important to remember that getting to the point isn't about being blunt or dismissive. It's not about cutting off someone else's thoughts or rushing them along. It's about creating space for clear, intentional communication. It's about finding the balance between being succinct and being thorough. The goal is not to remove all the nuance or subtleties from a conversation, but to avoid unnecessary complexity that doesn't serve the main purpose of what you're trying to communicate. One way to practice getting to the point is to observe the moments when you feel yourself beginning to ramble. Notice when your thoughts start to wander, and when you begin adding unnecessary details that don't contribute to the conversation. Instead of simply following that instinct to fill the silence or explain more than is needed, pause and refocus on your core message. Ask yourself, what's the one thing I want this person to walk away with? And then direct your words toward that. The more you practice getting to the point, the more natural it will feel. You'll begin to notice that your conversations are more efficient, your messages are clearer, and you're able to hold the attention of your audience better. You'll be able to express yourself with more confidence, and others will appreciate the directness and clarity you bring to the table. It's not about stripping away the richness of conversation or dumbing things down. It's about respecting the value of your time and your listener's time. It's about recognizing that, sometimes, less is more. When you get to the point, your words carry weight. They matter more because they're focused, deliberate, and purposeful. And when you focus on what's truly important, you create space for more meaningful and productive conversations. Chapter 7. Use powerful words. Every word must count. There's a subtle power in choosing the right words, words that are measured, deliberate, and meaningful. It's easy to think that the more we say, the more impactful our words will be, but the opposite is often true. The words you use, and more importantly, the words you choose not to use, have a profound effect on how you are perceived and how your message lands. Powerful language is not just about what you say, it's about how you say. When you use powerful words, you don't just convey a message, you create an impact. You make people listen. But powerful words don't come from random choices or from trying to impress others. They come from a place of clarity, intention, and respect. Powerful words are purposeful. They are the ones that cut through the noise and get to the heart of what you're trying to communicate. They're the words that inspire, motivate, and persuade. Take a moment and think about the times when someone's words truly resonated with you. It might have been a leader, a mentor, or even a friend. What made their words stand out? Often it wasn't just the content but the way they were said, the confidence behind them, the clarity, and the conviction in every syllable. That's the power of using words that matter. When you speak with intention, when you choose your words carefully, people listen differently. They're drawn to the power of what you're saying, not just the words themselves. The first step in using powerful words is understanding that not all words are created equal. Some words are weak, fluffy, vague, or uncertain. These words don't carry weight, and they don't help your message land with impact. Words like maybe, possibly, or I think can undermine the power of your statement because they signal hesitation or uncertainty. These words leave room for doubt. They don't express confidence, and they don't inspire trust. On the other hand, words like I will, I know, and I believe convey certainty and conviction. They make it clear that you're not just speaking off the cuff. You've thought about what you're saying, and you're willing to stand behind it. When you speak with certainty, people take you seriously. They trust that you're not just filling the air with empty words. They trust that you know what you're talking about, and that your words are worth listening to. But powerful words aren't just about exuding confidence, they're also about precision. Every word you say should serve a specific purpose. It should add value to the conversation. This means you need to be intentional with your language. Instead of using general, imprecise terms, get specific. Instead of saying, we need to improve the process, say we need to streamline the process to eliminate delays and increase efficiency. The more precise you are with your language, the more powerful your message becomes. Powerful words also have the ability to evoke emotion. Think about the difference between a simple statement and one that stirs something inside you. Words like change, freedom, hope, and courage have the ability to inspire action because they tap into something deeper, our values, our desires, our beliefs. When you choose words that resonate emotionally, you create a connection with your audience. You don't just convey information, you stir something in them. You inspire them to act, to think differently, or to feel empowered. This emotional connection is particularly important when you want to persuade or influence others. The best communicators don't just present facts or ideas, they speak to the heart. They use words that paint a picture, words that create vivid imagery and spark imagination. They speak in a way that makes their audience feel something, and that emotional reaction drives action. But it's not just about choosing powerful words in the moment. It's about building a vocabulary that consistently reflects strength, purpose, and clarity. The more you consciously choose words that are intentional, precise, and emotionally resonant, the more natural it will become to communicate with power. Over time, you'll find that your language transforms. You'll naturally begin to speak with more authority and confidence because you've been training yourself to choose your words carefully. Another key to using powerful words is being mindful of their tone and delivery. The best words, when spoken without conviction, lose their impact. You could have the most powerful sentence in the world, but if you deliver it with hesitation or uncertainty, it won't land. It's not just about the words themselves, but about how you say them. When you speak with a steady, confident tone, when your words come from a place of belief, you make an impact. Your audience feels your certainty, and that draws them in. The power of words also comes from knowing when to use them and when to hold back. Sometimes, less is more. Powerful words don't need to be used in every sentence. In fact, the more you speak, the less weight each word carries. Think about the people who have mastered the art of using powerful words. They don't speak often, but when they do, their words have a weight that commands attention. This isn't just a matter of being concise, it's about being deliberate. When you know that what you say matters, you don't waste your words. You don't speak just to fill silence. You speak when you have something valuable to contribute, and when you do, people listen. A powerful word, when used at the right moment, has the potential to change the course of a conversation or even a relationship. It's like planting a seed. It has the power to grow, to take root, and to inspire change. But to make that seed grow, you have to choose your words carefully and speak them with confidence. When you do, you create something lasting. Your words become a tool for influence, for connection, and for growth. One of the best ways to start using more powerful words is to pay attention to the language you use in your daily life. Listen to the words you speak and notice when they're weak or hesitant. Notice when you fall into the trap of using filler words or vague language. And then make a conscious effort to replace them with words that reflect confidence, clarity, and purpose. It's a simple shift, but over time, it will make a big difference in how you communicate and how others perceive you. You don't have to wait for big, dramatic moments to use powerful words. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice choosing the right words, to communicate with intention, and to make an impact. Whether you're giving a presentation, having a casual chat with a friend, or sending an email, you have the power to choose words that will resonate. And the more you practice, the more natural it will feel. The next time you speak, remember that words are not just words, they're tools. They have the power to influence, to inspire, and to create change. So choose them wisely. Speak with purpose, speak with confidence, and watch how your words begin to transform the way you communicate and the way people respond to you. When you speak with intention, the impact of your words is limitless. Chapter 8. How to stop explaining yourself too much. Sometimes, it feels like there's this unwritten rule that we need to explain ourselves constantly, especially when we feel unsure or want to be understood. The urge to clarify, justify, or provide further reasoning behind every little action or statement can be overwhelming. But what if I told you that constantly explaining yourself is often not only unnecessary, but also counterproductive? More often than not, the need to explain every decision or opinion can actually dilute your message, making you seem uncertain or insecure, even if that's not the case at all. Think about how you respond when someone else spends an inordinate amount of time trying to explain themselves. There's a point when you stop listening, because you've already understood what they meant. You might even start feeling a bit uncomfortable, like they're overcompensating, and your trust in their own clarity starts to fade. That constant need to explain, while often rooted in the desire to ensure understanding, can have the opposite effect. It's a simple fact that when you over-explain, you leave space for doubt, not only in the minds of others but in your own. One of the most effective ways to avoid unnecessary explanations is to develop the confidence to let your words stand on their own. This doesn't mean you should avoid explaining yourself altogether, but rather that you should recognize when explanations are redundant or even self-defeating. When you're clear on your stance, your ideas, or your decisions, you don't need to pad them with excessive justification. Sometimes, brevity and directness speak louder than pages of explanation. Part of this comes down to understanding why we feel the need to explain ourselves. More often than not, it stems from a fear of judgment or rejection. When we offer too much explanation, it's because we want to cover every possible angle, hoping to preempt any misunderstandings or criticisms. We want to make sure we've accounted for every possibility, leaving nothing to chance. But here's the reality. People aren't always looking for that level of detail. They trust that you've made your decision for a reason, and the more you explain, the more it might seem like you're second-guessing